Now, sometimes musicians and movies just don't go hand in hand. Hey, what's going on, Flix Talkers? Welcome back to another movie review, this time for the horror comedy brought to us by the Foo Fighters entitled Studio 666. And this film is directed by BJ McDonnell, who did more short films, music videos, and a sequel to a lesser-known horror franchise, Hatchet 3. But this guy is more known in the camera and electrical department. So take that as you will. And this film's story actually comes from the lead singer of the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl. And a quick synopsis for Studio 666 is: legendary rock band Foo Fighters move into an Encino mansion steeped in grisly rock and roll history to record their much anticipated 10th album. Now, just a quick heads up, guys, all of my movie reviews are completely spoiler free unless otherwise noted in the title, so whatever I talk about is completely based on whatever has been shown in the trailers. So if you guys did miss the trailer for this film and want to check it out before this review, I'll leave that link down in the description below. Alright, so remember at the beginning of this video when I said sometimes musicians and movies just don't go together? This is definitely one of them. And the main reason why I do say that is because these members of Foo Fighters cannot act. Now, Dave Grohl aside, I think he's probably the best actor in this bunch that we get. Granted, they are not actors. They are musicians first and foremost. I totally understand that, and I'm not trying to fault them whatsoever, but you can absolutely tell a lot of these guys are taking the acting extremely seriously. And the only one that really seems to be having a good time with this film is Dave Grohl. And maybe it is because he's put in the situations that are the wackiest and craziest, so he's kind of in the forefront of this film, so maybe he feels like he has to ham it up and really get those acting chops in, but he was a standout to me. Now, sticking with some of the pros of this film, and I kind of am going in order of pros and cons. So the film being based on a story by Dave Grohl, I think was awesome. Now, I did grow up on Foo Fighters. They're a huge part. I think of anyone that's my age in their mid 30s, we grew up on the Foo Fighters. Whether you like them or not, they had hits. And if you guys are a little older, you definitely remember Dave Grohl as the drummer in Nirvana. Now, that being said, what did I think about the story? So, I mean, we're focusing on Foo Fighters, an actual real life group, so it is rooted in a lot of non-fiction. Dave is pretty much letting the record execs know that, hey, to obtain a classic 10th album, we have to go on this retreat or definitely seclude ourselves from the typical Hollywood studio experience, which I was fine with, which I'm totally fine with, because in real life, a lot of bands do this. Especially after creating a catalog of music over 2 decades, I think a retreat is definitely warranted to get some inspiration. So now we have our movie. Misery style, we have our movie where we have our band who has a creative block put in this cabin in the woods type of situation. And once again, I did kind of like that because right at the beginning of the film, we do get our backstory from the early 90s that some tragedy did happen in this household. All right, now jumping to another pro of mine. We know this is a horror movie. We know kills are gonna happen. And I do come from an era where practical is definitely appreciated. And did I get my practical horror fill? Absolutely. This movie actually lent a lot of good practical kills that I almost stood up and bowed to the screen because of how gory and gruesome and awesome they looked on camera. And once I looked up this director of BJ McDonnell and saw that he did Hatchet 3, one of the most goriest horror franchises to exist, I put the 2 and 2 together and I was like, this totally makes sense for the kills that we got in this movie. Now, next up, another pro aspect of this film I did enjoy were the cameos. One of those being the hilarious neighbor played by Whitney Cummings. Now, she is absolutely the comic relief because she is a real life comedian, so this comes naturally to her. Now, not only the lines that they wrote for her in this film were extremely funny, I thought some of the expressions and reactions she gave definitely lent to more of that physical humor that you usually see on stage from a stand-up comedian. And I thought she nailed it perfectly. When she was on screen, that was the most times I was laughing in this movie. All right, and the final big pro I have for this movie, guys, was the intense score. Not the music that they were creating along the way with guitars and different instruments like that, but the score created specifically for the intense scenes where people are lurking or we get our evil demon reveal or other horror antics along the way. I thought it was very, very creepy, and seeing this in theaters definitely lent that full immersive experience when it needed to be. And on an awesome side note, John Carpenter produced the theme song for this film, as well as making a cameo. So I think for the horror fans, you get John Carpenter in the film, That's awesome. Now I know what you guys are thinking now. All of these pros I did name sound pretty cool, right? Good kills, some funny laughs along the way, John Carpenter. But wait, hold on, my friends. Hold on. I have not got to my cons yet. Going back to the Foo Fighters themselves not being actors, they let out some of the cheesiest lines I had ever heard since I saw the film The Dead Don't Die. And you guys might take that as some disrespect to that movie because we saw it in theaters and we absolutely hated the comedy in that film, as well as the rest of the theater who was not laughing one bit. And I understand comedy is subjective, so I think noting that, if you guys do like The Dead Don't Die, you guys might like the humor in this film. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. I was not laughing whatsoever when the Foo Fighters were speaking and trying to make an attempt at jokes. Now, another big con of mine, guys, was the actual story's originality. I will just say that I definitely got some inspirations and feels of the Amityville Horror as well as Evil Dead. There was so much inspiration, I will call it, lifted from those iconic movies. I just could not separate the two, watching this and then thinking of other movies that came out way before this film and not thinking that it was a complete ripoff. We get a lot of demonic Book of the Dead possession, and it's like, you did that with the Necronomicon and Evil Dead. How can you recreate something like that in 2022? Yeah, you can call it homage, but it just wasn't original for me. Though I will admit a lot of the demons, the shadow demons I'll just call them, did look really cool, but our main ghost or ghoulie or demon or whatever he wasn't scary whatsoever. And I think the topic of demonic possession has just been going on for so many decades that for them to label this story by Dave Grohl, that's awesome. He wrote a story, but it's not that original to most of us that watched horror along the years to say, hey, this is groundbreaking. And along with some of that story inspiration, in between all of our cool kills that I did name in the pros, this movie was very lackluster and boring. Just the moments that we got to spend with our Foo Fighters, the legendary Foo Fighters, I will say, that downtime was extremely boring and dry, and the kills were very few and none, especially in the first act of the movie, that even when we did get our amazing kills, it was not redeeming whatsoever to make up for all the slow, boring parts in between. And I'll end off this review by saying the ending was extremely ridiculous. And I know what you guys are thinking. You're going into this movie expecting ridiculous, right? Absolutely. I was expecting over the top. After the first kill that we did get on screen, I was expecting grandiose 80s, 90s horror style cheese. And did we get that? No, not really. We got one of the lamest fight scenes I've seen in such a long time, with a very underlined Hollywood message at the end that made me just say, come on, Dave, go back to the drawing board, get a little more original with this shit. So all in all, I think you could really splice down this movie in a supercut of kills, have fun that way, but if you go in this to even stay awake, you might be sadly mistaken. Unless you're jacked up on Red Bull the whole time, you may be falling asleep during this movie. And that being said, I'm gonna give Studio 666 a solid 2 out of 5. All right, Flix Talkers, Studio 666 is in theaters only now. Are you guys gonna be checking it out, or are you guys gonna wait till streamer? Let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And are you guys Foo Fighter fans? Let me know once again. And if you guys did appreciate my review and thoughts, let me know by liking the video and consider subscribing today, as I do movie reviews and reactions. All right, guys, till next video, I'm gone. Peace.